Hello and welcome back to my channel, Chess Captures Threats. In today's episode, in episode 29 of the Chess Guide, we'll be going over Discovered Check. So, hopefully you enjoyed last episode, which was piece combinations. Again, we're going to go to something different of Discovered Check. So we've got 4 examples. We're going to be going over the main things is what is a Discovered Check, why is it useful. So the 4 examples here we've got is this Rook and Knight, and the Rook and Bishop giving Discovered Check, the Queen and Bishop giving a Discovered Check, and last but not least, what other things you can do with a Discovered Check as well. There. So, in the first example here, we're just going to go over the basics of it. What is a Discovered Check? A Discovered Check is where you move a piece that uncovers a check. That's why at the minute it's called Discovered Check, because you move a piece here, so you move the knight and it discovers this check. So, why is this useful? Now, we have 4 examples to go over this, and here I'm going to show you the reason why. We can move this knight to one of 2 squares, really. So this is a good Discovered Check because it gives this, but there is a better move here. Now, if we move our knight to f4, check. So, technically, it could be taken realistically, but it can't, because, as it shows it flashing, they're in check, which means they have to move. They can't block with the knight, it's too far away. So after they move out the way, for example, we can now take their knight for free. So that's how you can win a piece. You can also here go knight to g3 check as well. Same exact thing, they move, and you give another, you take their piece. So, there is that one. Now, in the second example here, we can win a lot more. So it's not just, winning a piece and that. Sometimes you can get on the better side and win a queen. So, hopefully now you understood what happens in the first one. I'm going to give a few seconds, see if you can guess what this one is. So, if you had guessed that we could play a few moves, either Rook to e5 check, as you see, giving a check and attacking the queen, or Rook takes f7 check, attacking the queen here. So wherever this queen moves, it can technically block, but wherever it blocks, it will still be taken. So if it moved out the way, we can capture, and even if it blocks, we still will be able to capture and we'll win the game because we're a whole queen up. So, now Discovered Checks also, in a game, you will rarely see them. It will be quite a, you can create them as a plan. That's something we could try and look to do, because realistically we're trying to get the best, ideas possible. So, we have the ideas of pushing loads of pawns off the opening, maybe getting our knight or bishop into a certain place, but also creating threats like this will force them to make really obscure moves because they have to move a piece way weirder because their king is being attacked and their rook is being attacked the other side of the board because Discovered Check is using those 2 pieces. So, the third example here we're going over is using the bishop and queen. So here we can win a rook for a bishop, but we'll be 3 points up because we'll also capture a pawn. So saying that, hopefully you had guessed the move bishop takes g7. Again, can't be captured by any of these pieces because obviously there is an ongoing check, and even if there is they try and block it with the knight, we are still going to be able to win their rook for the bishop, and now we are miles up with these pawns and everything. So just to clarify here, the reason this is, again, maybe we don't want to, if this bishop is so good, maybe we use it in a different factor and, we try and attack with it. So maybe we take this pawn, for example, and then, we could do this. Obviously, we've now stopped them from taking because there's a pin and we're threatening checkmate almost, but the knight is just blocking it. So what we can do here is, put pressure after a discovered check. We're able to add that increasing pressure just to try and make the other team crack almost. So, hopefully we understand that these pieces here that aren't giving check can still be used here. And the last example here is how we can use discovered checks other than just winning a piece immediately. This discovered check here as well from the knight, obviously we should be able to see it because it's this, but another thing, hopefully earlier on in the chess guide we had skewers. So obviously we move the knight out the way, this gives a check, and obviously after this check and it moves out the way, this uncovers the queen. So once it moves, we're able to do this. So looking at, really, skewers are the only things you can get from discovered check. Also, another tip is the only pieces that can give discovered check, so you can't obviously do a discovered check with a pawn, because if you move a piece out of the way, the pawn isn't going to be able to check it because it only goes one square. The king, obviously, because the king can't give check, and the knight, because the knight already jumps over pieces, so it can't be blocked. So hopefully you see those for examples. We're just going to go over it again just to make sure we understand, and then that will be it for the video. So, understanding what a discovered check is, we move a piece out of the way to uncover a check on the king, and so for example here, again giving that check, and to make a discovered check useful, we could attack a unprotected piece, so that when we move here and they have to, move their king away, we were able to win a free piece. The second example here, we went over how even a rook can be a blocking piece almost for the bishop, but then moving it out the way to one of two squares to give a check, or even a check here to win the queen. It could be as valuable as it wants. We had many options we could do here. We could even technically have, if we didn't pretend there was no queen here, we would be able to put other threats. For example, maybe, trying to put a queen or rook here check to try and maybe attack the bishop. There's many other things you can do, but obviously in this scenario we would give a check, and then whatever happens we'd be able to win their queen. The third example here went over how the bishop can be, again, a very good piece to be discovered, because it can go everywhere over this board, pretty much wherever it wants. If it wants to go back to its French chateau position, that's still a check and it's being defended now. And if we want to go aggressive, obviously we can win a exchange, it's called, because obviously we're not just winning a rook, we're winning a rook and a pawn for a bishop, so we're only going to be 3 points up from that. So after they move the king and this capture happens, we are obviously up. And last but not least, we have a discovered check with a skewer. So what happens here is when we move our knight out the way, give a check, again could be anywhere here, and then when the king moves, we obviously could here, we've uncovered a check, and it's obviously going on to the queen. So king moves out the way and we win their queen. So that is it for today's video. Hopefully you understand how we can use a discovered check. So the next few episodes will be about stuff like double check. So this is where, for example, here, this is ongoing from the discovered check, for example, we would give a check here for it now. Attacking, giving 2 checks. So, but we'll go over that more in depth in the next episode. So, thank you and bye-bye.